All right. I need to admit something before we properly get started. I replied to an email yesterday in English, and it sounded really good. I mean, a bit too good.
That too good part is doing a lot of work there.
Exactly. Well, not exactly. Let me explain. I did write something at first, but then I thought, this sounds a bit off. So I asked AI to fix it.
Right, so you handed it over halfway through?
Yeah, kind of. I asked it to, make it sound smoother, maybe a bit more polite. And then suddenly, the whole thing just worked.
Funny how that happens. You press a button and suddenly you sound like you've been speaking English your whole life.
That's exactly how it felt. I read it back and thought, oh wow, I actually sound quite fluent. But then I had this weird feeling.
Go on.
I wasn't sure if that was really me anymore. I mean, the message was mine, but the English didn't quite feel like mine.
That's an interesting line to cross, isn't it? When your ideas are yours, but the way they come out isn't.
And the strange part is, it feels great at first. You're like, finally, I sound natural. But then you realize you didn't actually get there yourself.
So the question becomes, was that you speaking, or was it your assistant doing the talking for you?
Yeah, I don't even know how to answer that properly.
Well, that might be exactly what we're getting into today.
Oh, by the way, if you've just joined us, this is Mind the Gap. We usually chat about the kind of English people actually use, not the perfect version you see in textbooks.
And today's one of those topics that feels a bit too real.
Yeah, especially if you've ever used AI and thought, wait, that sounds better than me.
Which, let's be honest, happens quite a lot these days.
So I guess what we're really asking is, if something sounds like you, but you didn't quite produce it, is it still yours?
That's where things start to get a bit blurry.
I keep thinking about that email actually, not just because it sounded good, but because of how easy it was. That's the part that stuck with me.
Easy in what sense? Less effort or just quicker?
A bit of both, I'd say. I didn't have to sit there wondering, is this the right word or does this sound awkward? I just typed something like, can you rephrase this? And it sorted everything out.
That's quite something. It takes away that moment where you'd normally hesitate a bit.
That's exactly it. Everything just flows, almost too smoothly if I'm honest.
When it feels that smooth, it can give you the sense that you've improved overnight.
That's the strange bit. It really does feel like that. Like suddenly your English has leveled up.
It's almost like your English got an upgrade overnight. No extra practice, no long hours, just there it is.
And it's not just emails. I've used it for messages, even a bit of speaking practice. Sometimes I'd say, make this sound more natural, and what comes back just sounds better.
That phrase alone, sound more natural, has probably become part of people's daily routine now.
Honestly, yeah. And it rarely disappoints, or at least it doesn't feel like it does.
Another thing it does quite well is offering alternatives. You're not stuck with one version. You can ask it to polish your sentence, make it clearer, or adjust the tone entirely.
It does feel like having someone next to you, constantly fixing things as you go along.
A very patient one too. No pressure, no judgment, just instant feedback whenever you need it.
That instant feedback part really changes things. You're not left guessing anymore.
Which is probably why so many people are drawn to it. It's quick, it's convenient, and it makes things feel manageable.
There's also something quite comforting about it. It makes learning feel less heavy.
Less heavy, more efficient. That's quite appealing, especially when you're busy.
And once you get used to that feeling, it's quite easy to rely on it without realizing.
That's where things begin to shift a little, because at that point, it's not just supporting you, it's shaping how you use English.
And maybe even taking over parts of it.
Perhaps, though before we go too far down that line, it's fair to say for many people, this feels like a breakthrough.
It really does. It's hard not to be impressed by how well it works.
And that moment when you think, this actually works, that's what makes it so compelling.
Which is probably why at the start, you don't question it at all.
There's something I didn't quite expect though. After using it for a while, I started feeling a bit unsure about my own English.
Unsure in what way?
It's hard to explain. On the surface, everything looks better. My sentences are cleaner, more natural, but when I try to say something without help, I hesitate more than I thought I would.
So the output improved, but the process didn't quite follow.
That's a good way to put it.
It's like I can recognize a good sentence when I see one, but I'm not always sure I could come up with it myself.
That gap matters more than people realize. Recognizing something and producing it are two very different things.
Which makes me wonder, am I actually improving or just getting better at using the tool?
That's where the question gets a bit uncomfortable.
Because part of me feels quite proud, I'm not gonna lie. I look at what I wrote and think, that's not bad.
And another part?
Another part of me knows I didn't really earn that.
That tension right there, that's the interesting bit.
It almost feels like I skipped something, like I jumped to the result without going through the middle.
Some people would call that efficiency. Others might call it a shortcut.
A shortcut doesn't sound too bad until you think about what you might be missing.
Here's another way to look at it. Are you learning English or are you outsourcing it?
That sounds a bit harsh.
Maybe, but it's a fair question. If most of the thinking is being done elsewhere, what exactly are you practicing?
I suppose I'm practicing recognizing what sounds right.
Which is useful, no doubt, but it's only half of it.
That makes sense. Because when I actually need to speak, there's still that moment where my mind just goes blank.
And that's the bit no one sees. The polished version hides it quite well.
It's a bit like using a cheat code in a game. You still get to the next level, but you didn't really play it.
That's a good comparison. A cheat code gives you results, but not the experience.
And without that experience, I guess it's harder to build something real.
That's where people talk about the illusion of learning. It feels like progress, but something underneath is missing.
That's a bit unsettling, actually.
It is, especially when everything on the surface looks fine.
I suppose the tricky part is you don't notice it straight away.
Exactly. It takes a moment like the one you described, when you try to do it yourself and something doesn't quite come out.
And that's when you realize, maybe I've been relying on this more than I thought.
Which brings us back to the same question, really. Is this helping you learn or just helping you perform?
And those two things aren't always the same.
Let me try something with you. Imagine you see a sentence like this. I'd appreciate it if you could look into this matter at your earliest convenience.
That already sounds like something AI would write.
Exactly. Well, not quite exactly, but you know what I mean. It sounds polished, doesn't it?
Very polished. If I receive that, I'd think, oh, this person's English is solid.
Now here's the interesting part. If you had to say that out loud, on the spot, no time to prepare, would you say it like that?
No chance. I'd probably say something like, can you check this for me when you have time?
And there it is. Same meaning, very different delivery.
One sounds impressive. The other sounds like me.
That difference is what people often miss. Recognizing a sentence like the first one is easy. Producing it naturally, that's another story.
So that's what you meant earlier about recognizing versus producing.
That's the idea. Recognition is passive, production takes effort.
That explains why it feels easier with AI. It's doing the production for you.
You could say you're outsourcing your English. You bring the intention, it handles the expression.
That sounds a bit dangerous when you put it like that.
It depends how you use it. But here's where it gets tricky. The more you rely on that polished version, the more your own version starts to feel inadequate.
I've actually felt that. Sometimes I write something, and before I even finish, I'm already thinking, this isn't good enough.
Which is ironic, because that not good enough version is exactly what you need to practice.
So the messy version matters.
Very much so. That's where your brain is actually working.
Whereas with AI, it just skips that part.
It smooths everything out, almost like gliding over the surface without ever going deeper.
That's such a good way to describe it. It feels smooth, but maybe a bit shallow.
That's one way of putting it. Fluency that comes from within tends to feel different. It might be slower, less perfect, but it's yours.
Whereas the AI version is cleaner, but slightly detached.
Detached is a good word. It sounds right, but it doesn't always feel right when you try to use it.
That explains why sometimes I read something and think, I get it, but when I try to say it, I just can't.
That gap is where real learning happens.
It's also where things feel a bit uncomfortable.
Exactly. That discomfort is part of the process. If everything feels effortless, there's a chance something important is being skipped.
So real fluency isn't about sounding perfect. It's about being able to build the sentence yourself, even if it's a bit messy.
That's a good way to think about it. Build first, polish later, not the other way round.
I think I've been doing it the other way round.
A lot of people are, to be fair, especially now that tools make it so easy.
Which brings us back to that feeling when everything looks fluent, but you're not quite sure if it actually is.
And that's the moment worth paying attention to.
I'm starting to wonder now, should I just stop using it altogether?
I wouldn't go that far. It's not really about cutting it out, more about how you use it.
So it's not the tool itself, it's the way I rely on it.
That's closer to it. Used well, it can actually help quite a lot. Used poorly, it just replaces your effort.
All right, but that's still a bit vague. What does using it well actually look like?
Let me put it this way. Think of it as a coach, not a crutch.
Coach versus crutch. That's quite a strong contrast.
It helps to think of it that way. A coach guides you, gives feedback, pushes you a bit. A crutch just holds you up so you don't have to do the work.
So if I'm just copying whatever it gives me, that's more like leaning on a crutch.
That's one way to see it. You get the result, but you don't build the ability behind it.
Then what would a coach version look like in real life?
One simple thing is this. After it gives you a better sentence, don't just accept it. Try to say it again yourself. Maybe change a few words, see if you can rebuild it.
So not just, oh, that's nice, but actually use it.
Exactly. Well, more like actively use it. Let it become part of your own language, not just something you recognize.
That probably takes a bit more effort though.
It does, but that's where the learning happens.
What about using it to practice, like asking it questions?
That's actually a good use. You can ask it to quiz you. For example, quiz me on these phrases, or give me a situation and I'll respond.
Oh, that sounds quite fun. It's like turning it into a practice buddy.
Exactly. More like a practice buddy than a replacement, something you interact with rather than something that does everything for you.
I suppose that also means I need to think a bit more instead of just accepting the first answer.
That's where self-reflection comes in. You look at what it gives you and ask, why is this better?
That sounds like more work, but also more useful.
It builds your awareness. Over time, you start noticing patterns on your own.
So instead of just getting answers, I'm training my thinking as well.
That's the key difference. One gives you a result, the other changes how you approach the language.
It also feels a bit more sustainable, like something I can actually build on.
That's a good word for it. Learning isn't just about quick wins, it's about what stays with you.
So maybe AI is like juice, easy to drink, quick energy.
And you still need the fiber, otherwise it doesn't quite do the job.
That's such a strange but helpful image.
It sticks though. Use the tool, but don't let it do all the thinking.
So in the end, it's not about avoiding AI, it's about staying involved.
That's about it. Stay involved, stay a bit uncomfortable, and you'll probably get the best out of it.
It's funny. When we started, I was just thinking about that one email. Now it feels like a much bigger question.
It tends to go that way. You start with something small and suddenly it opens up quite a lot.
I think the biggest thing for me is this. I don't want to just sound fluent anymore. I actually want to feel fluent when I speak.
There's a difference there, and it's not always obvious at first.
And I suppose that means I can't skip the uncomfortable bits, the pauses, the mistakes, all of that.
Those are usually the parts that do the most work, even if they don't feel like it at the time.
Not the most exciting answer, but probably the honest one.
Learning rarely feels impressive while it's happening. It only looks that way afterwards.
So I guess the real question is, if AI can do all the speaking for you, what exactly are you learning?
That's the one worth sitting with for a bit.
I mean, I'm definitely still going to use it, just maybe not in the same way as before.
That sounds like a reasonable place to land. Use it, but stay involved.
And maybe give my own brain a bit more to do.
Can't go wrong with that.
All right, if you've been listening along and found yourself nodding at any point, you probably know what we're talking about.
And if you enjoyed today's chat, feel free to follow the show, share it with someone, or just come back next time.
We'll pick this up again soon, I think. There's probably more to unpack here.
For now, though, that's where we'll leave it.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.